Yeah, me too.
Hello and welcome to the Total Motorsport F1 Show. My name is Joe Krishnan and you are listening to the second episode of the newest F1 pod on the block. Now, we launched last week for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, and yeah, it was a great race. We had Lando Norris coming home to take his second career victory, and it's quite a quick turnaround to the next European race because we've got the Italian Grand Prix at Monza coming up. But first of all, we do have some breaking news to bring you from today. And I'm joined by Total Motorsport's very own Brandon Sutton and Adam Dickinson again. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hey, yeah, just one podcast in, and we've already we've already got our first casualty as an F1 driver.
Yeah, let's dive straight into that then. So Williams have announced that Logan Sargent, after let's say 18 months in the Williams seat, has been replaced by Franco Colapinto for the rest of the 2024 season. I think this one's come out of nowhere a little bit, don't you think?
He was
Yeah,
kind of on the block to be replaced. That's been talked about since the end of last year, but Colapinto's come out of nowhere, definitely.
yeah, it's kind of like he'd been on the block so long that I kind of didn't expect it to happen at this point. Like, before I think before Imola, then there was a lot of chat about they might put Antonelli in there, and then that didn't happen, and they didn't get rid of him in the summer break either. So yeah, like it's in terms of his performances, then it's not surprising, but it's just the fact that there's been maybe better opportunities or opportunities that you might expect more to get rid of him, and they haven't. So it's kind of surprising that it's happened now, and like you say, that, or like Brandon said, that Colapinto is the one that they put in.
So I think I just lost you a little bit on the sound just towards the end.
Oh, yeah, just yeah, it's not surprising in terms of his performances, but it's surprising that it's happened now when it felt like there were other opportunities during the season where they stuck by him.
Awesome. And obviously the 21-year-old, 49th driver for Williams, the first Argentine driver for 23 years. I think it's come a little bit out of left field considering, they're talking about Kimi Antonelli before. And obviously we've got Carlos Sainz coming into the team next season. It doesn't feel like there's much of a opportunity really for Colapinto to get his foot into the F1 seat, or the F1 as a world, I guess you could say. 9 races I think he's got. So it's going to be quite a tough test going straight into Monza, expecting him to start delivering results, I think.
I think it's absolutely bizarre. Like, I really hope that he can succeed, but this is his first full season of F2, and I think he's only done one free practice session at the British Grand Prix, and after that, then James Vowles said, I really believe you can burn a driver if you put them in the car too soon. And actually, in modern day F1, what you're seeing is rookies are struggling as a result of things. Actually, our commitment to them has to be an amount of time in a historic car, an amount of time with preparation to make sure if we choose them to go forward, they're in the strongest place they can be. And we haven't provided that to Franco at this point. And that was Silverstone in July. And it just feels like he's being set up to fail in a way. I just think for, a driver that, he's had success in junior series, but he's not been a standout in the way that Ollie Behrman had been, in the way that Kimi Antonelli has been. So to be throwing him in now when Vowles said that 2 months ago, and he's not had time in at least a modern F1 car now, and I don't know how much running he's had in historic Williams. I'm not sure if he's had any since then. So it really just seems a bizarre choice to me, and yeah, it just feels like he's been like put in a tough position from what Vowles had said, and potentially set up to fail.
And Brandon, do you have any sympathy at all for Logan Sargent?
I can probably sympathize with how he feels to have his career so just brutally ended, but I don't think he can have any complaints. There's been too many crashes. He's not even been on the pace. if he was on the pace and at least collecting points here and there, then maybe you could excuse crashes. But both of them at the same time, I don't know how you expect to keep your seat. It's just quite brutal that it's happened now. And like Adam said, for Williams's public excuse is they want to get points, but it doesn't really make sense with Colapinto if you're looking for points. So I don't know. I feel like Val's just more or less wanted him out of the team, and they've thrown the first person they can find in. Really,
Yeah, I don't think Logan can have too many complaints, to be honest with you, because when you look at how often he's been beaten by Alex Albon in the same machinery, it is pretty damning evidence. And you could expect that in the rookie season, but maybe not so much in the second season where he's had time to adapt to the car. The one area I did have sympathy for him is in Australia when Albon crashed and Williams obviously prioritising Albon, who they thought they could get points. They gave him his car, and I do think that things like that have definitely stunted his development. But again, you have to say that, well, Albon earned it from his previous results, sorry, not experiences. So yeah, I think it's an understandable decision. It's quite brutal, just to get rid of him for the last 9 races of the season. But the places down the bottom there are so crucial in terms of the money for the teams, isn't it? So even if Colapinto got 2 points and Sargent got none, you'd probably say that's a justified decision, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would, but it's just when there's, I don't know, like there's Mick Schumacher about who's got F1 experience. There's Liam Lawson about who's got F1 experience. There's, I'd say even if they're not in Williams' junior setup, then there are drivers like Antonelli. There's Vesti, Teo Porcher that's not driving. So it just feels like there are so many kind of drivers that'd be better suited. And in terms of Sargent, I think I kind of have sympathy in the fact that he was promoted too early, and Williams have admitted that. And it was very rushed getting him into the seat when it became clear that they wanted to get rid of Latifi when they did. And I think on the one hand it's clear that he wasn't ready, but on the other hand, when we've seen these drivers going in, with a gap like that to the teammate, like De Vries, like Ricciardo at McLaren, like Verstappen's teammates before Perez, then they don't really recover it. It's very difficult to recover it. So I think the whole situation has maybe been mismanaged or rushed by Williams, but equally Sargent hasn't maximised what he could have done in the situation, and now he's paid the price.
So let's move on to our post Dutch Grand Prix discussion. I didn't think it was the best race, to be honest with you. I thought there were some moments where it looked like it could have been exciting, and obviously we had Leclerc and Piastri fighting for the podium at the end. But Lando Norris finishing some 20 seconds clear of that Max Verstappen. If you said that last season, I think a lot of people would have laughed at you. This kind of new McLaren dominance is something that we've not seen for a long time. And for Norris himself, does that make it seem like he made the right choice in turning down Red Bull when they started pitting on the charm offensive not that long ago?
in retrospect, it would seem that way, but we obviously don't know anything Norris knew at the time. We don't know whether he just didn't want to go up against Verstappen or whether he actually saw all of this work as it was coming along. But yeah, in retrospect, it seems like it's completely the right call at the moment. McLaren and Red Bull seem like they're on completely opposite paths.
Yeah, just completely echo that.
Yeah, I think with Norris, I think being at McLaren and being the number one driver there, I know they obviously say that he can race with Piastri, but I think he's got a nice bit of comfort there. McLaren are happy with him. Why rock the boat as long as they're going to be competitive? And I think they must have shown him some data to prove that's going to be the case. For this season, because let's face it, there were some times where McLaren weren't quick. But I think as you said, racing with Max Verstappen, you're almost fighting a losing battle before you started because he is Red Bull's main man. So I think maybe Norris now will be feeling a bit more smug about his decision, and as you said, they're going in opposite paths. And maybe, McLaren have a real shot at the Constructors' Championship.
Oh, definitely. I think they're the favourites. I know there's stuff about Red Bull and, Verstappen's floor and whether they've got kind of upgrades on the way. But I just think if you look at Perez's performances versus Piastri, and now Norris looks to be in a position where he can potentially, at least match Verstappen's result for the rest of the season, if not beat him from here on out. So I think they've got to be the favourites, and they have, like, when they've upgraded, then it's done a really good job. Obviously, Australia last year, and then I think Miami this year, and then the Dutch Grand Prix, which obviously two of those was after Norris signed his contract. But I imagine he'll have known, when he did sign, that the Miami upgrade was in the pipeline and what their expectations were. So, it's kind of a lot of people, and us included, will analyse decisions from the outside when drivers make them from the inside with all the knowledge that they've got, and we've only got a fraction from that. And I think he's absolutely been vindicated in what he's done.
What about you, Brandon? Do you think Red Bull might have been a better move, as in, like, in the long term, maybe? Is this a short-term thing for McLaren?
I'm not sure it's a short-term thing. If you look at how quickly they progressed since the Austrian Grand Prix last year, this isn't like they've just got a really good car, like a one-off year like Haas did in 2018. This seems like it's very clear development path. It seems like they're recruiting the right personnel. They have a good power unit. There's no reason why they won't stay on this trajectory. So yeah, definitely I feel like it's the right place for Norris to be now, and he does seem like he was right to say no to Red Bull. McLaren really should get the constructors done this year. They're only 30 points behind now. Perez is finishing between 6th and 8th every race. Piastri is a little bit further up. They should eat into that gap. So it does seem like McLaren's got the best package and the best team to be at the moment.
I think even without the Verstappen factor, McLaren is the best team to be at now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of harmony there, isn't there, with Andrea Stella and Zach Brown. They seem to be very in sync with each other. Staying on Verstappen and Norris, obviously they're very good friends away from the track, and we saw that with how they patched things up after Austria. But I did get a sense that maybe there was a little bit of mind games going on. I don't know if it was just playful fun, but when Norris said on the radio after the win, "Simply lovely," using the Verstappen catchphrase, that felt like a little bit of a wind up. And I'm sure he knows that Verstappen was feeling a bit frustrated. And then obviously you've got Verstappen, who Martin Brundle said, he theorized, I guess you could say, that he was driving slow on purpose to send a message to the people back at the factory at Red Bull, get a move on and let's get this car fixed again and we can fight. I just feel like there's a bit of mind games going on with both drivers there. And I don't know if you guys felt the same way about, especially what Norris did. I felt like a little bit of a cheeky move.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a lot easier for him to do now, I guess, when he's got what seems to be the dominant car. So I think he's clearly like cashing in on that. Now he's had he's gone through a lot of hardships and a lot of people doubting him. So now I think it's maybe just him being able to be a bit cockier and being in a position finally to do that, because he is, I'd say, at the moment he's going to be the favourite to win more races than not, than any other driver, I think, going through to the end of the season, just if things stay as they are. So I feel like he's using that opportunity now.
And this idea of Verstappen driving slow on purpose, he claimed that he was trying to bring the car home because of the issues with the understeer and other problems, as you mentioned, with the floor. It seems like that Red Bull is quite a hard car to drive at the moment. But then, I've seen people posting videos of Fernando Alonso in his Ferrari at Abu Dhabi, where he's literally it's almost like a rally car, and he's just got on with the job. So it's Verstappen throwing his toys out the pram just once too often, maybe, considering the dominance he's had over the last 2 years.
I think if Verstappen was going to send a message to Red Bull, he would do it in front of the cameras with his voice. I don't think he would deliberately drive slow. I would think if we've I've seen a bit of onboard from what Verstappen was trying to handle, and it seems like it's a complete mess. So it does make sense that he would just Norris was gone. He was 20 odd seconds up the road by the flag, so he's not going to fight for the win. The car's difficult to manage. It's not worth the risk to try to push to close that gap, and there's a good chance he was also like saving tires as well because Piastri was threatening to get past Leclerc every lap, and that McLaren had a lot of pace. So there's not like if he had got past Leclerc, then we don't know how long Verstappen would have been able to keep ahead of him for. So he could have just been saving for tires.
And just the last thing on the Dutch Grand Prix, again, we're staying with Verstappen because his father, Jos, has been in the press again, popping off about Red Bull and how Max had warned the team about these problems coming up. And it just feels a bit unnecessary now. It feels like it really could be heading towards, a bit of an acrimonious exit and Verstappen going to Mercedes at it for 2025, which I have to say, maybe like a month ago or 2 months ago, I didn't see that happening at all. But
yeah, it's if you at the start of the season when Red Bull had I was there at the launch and they had Newey there, Verstappen there, Horner there, and Marco wasn't there, but obviously he's the kind of been the fourth pillar of their dominance over the last few seasons and going back further. And we're in a position where Newey's gone, Horner and Marco seem to be at each other's throats through the press every week, and I just don't see those two being able to coexist at the team for long. And Verstappen could be on his way either next season or the season after. It just would have been absolutely unbelievable to say then. But yeah, he's clearly not happy, and like Brandon said, Red Bull are trending in the wrong direction, and Verstappen has the luxury of choice. He can go to any team on the grid, and they will want him there. And it's I think Jos. I don't know kind of how much of that is initiated by Verstappen, his comments, and how much is Jos speaking his own mind, but it's just not contributing at all to a healthy atmosphere at Red Bull. And that they, Horner and the top team there must know that the pressure is on.
yeah, I think we just.
I agree with Adam.
Sorry, Brandon, go ahead.
Go ahead. I agree with Adam. I think Jos is kind of his own person. He'll sort of do his own thing, but it's clear that the Verstappens aren't happy with something in Red Bull. I'm not sure how much of it is related to Max because Jos and Christian Horner have been going at each other all year long. So at one point, Jos even called for Horner to resign. He was saying he was going to destroy the team. So not really sure how much of that was more of a message to like the executives of Red Bull to try and get Horner out because there seems to be a very, very big vendetta there between Horner and Jos.
Yeah, I think also Toto Wolff has slipped in at the right time, hasn't he? With, saying, "Oh, Verstappen, I was wrong to say what I said at Silverstone about you," or he's really giving it the good old charm at the moment. You have to praise it really because if he ends up getting Verstappen, no disrespect to Antonelli, but Verstappen and Russell as a driver lineup would be quite incredible. I think that'll probably be the best on the grid for me next season. Okay, let's move on. We have another race coming up this weekend, and it is the Italian Grand Prix. Now, it's a huge occasion for Ferrari, as we know, with the Tifosi. It's the biggest race of the year. And I think at the moment, they're really going to need another Charles Leclerc masterclass, aren't they? Because for him to get a podium with this Ferrari at the moment, I think was quite a big result for the team. And yeah, how do you see that playing out at Monza this weekend?
I think they're going to struggle. I think if you look at how they've where their successes come this season, it's tended to be on obviously slower speeds tracks, and Zandvoort fits into that. I guess Hungary's the outlier, and yes, they got podiums at Austria and Spa, but that was kind of due to kind of circumstances ahead of them on the grid with the Verstappen Norris collision and Russell's disqualification. So yeah, I think they're going to struggle. Leclerc seemed very, very surprised that he that he got a podium or even been in the fight for a podium. But I think I think particularly Carlos Sainz thrives on emotion, and we saw last year how what an absolutely brilliant performance he put together to get a podium and fight um, for a lot of laps against both Red Bulls. So it's really going to have to lift them this weekend. It's not that kind of they're in the fight for the win and it might give them a better chance. It's like they need everything they can get from the fans and try to harness that within the team as well, because it's not a circuit suited to them, I think.
Yeah, I think with Carlos Sainz in particular. Oh, sorry, did you speak there? Sorry, it didn't come up at my end.
No.
I was just going to say about Carlos Sainz. I think like we've seen from his previous drives at Monza, when he came second at the 2020 race behind Gasly. As you said last year when he got the podium, I think he's finished 4th and 6th as well at Monza, which isn't terrible. As you said, he thrives on that kind of atmosphere. And also, I think at the moment we're seeing Sainz at his best level, even if the results don't reflect that. I think he's at his peak kind of performance, and it has tailed off from the start of the season, where I felt like Ferrari was strong. Now they're very much probably the 4th fastest team. But yeah, they really need to deliver a massive performance at Monza because, as you said, I think at this point it's becoming a bit of a. I think Mercedes could catch them before the end of the season, which I didn't see happening. Maybe 2 or 3 races into the season, but yeah. What do you think, Brandon?
Ferrari like to throw the kitchen sink at Monza. They really, obviously, they go all out there. And it seems like they're going to do that again this year because they've got upgrades on the way. They're looking to produce a more stable platform for the car, which they've said will expand the operating window and allow them to set it up better, but give the drivers confidence as well. And Vassar has turned around and said that they're still in the title fight in the context of this season too, which is obviously a very bold statement to make. And both Ferraris are actually very good in the Dutch GP. So if I was a track where they weren't expected to go well and they both pulled out a good result, Sainz only finished 5 seconds behind Piastri. Yeah, it could go well for them at Monza if they really commit to it and these upgrades work.
I'm not sure I kind of agree that Sainz is in his best form though. I mean, I think at the start of the season he was absolutely flying, and I think he feeds off emotion so well, and obviously he was still reeling from being ditched by Ferrari for Hamilton, and he reeled off obviously, a podium with Drawn win podium and beat Leclerc in the 3 races that he actually competed in, and I think he has, whether Leclerc's raised his game or I personally think Sainz is also, maybe dropped off a bit. I think he was very good at Zandvoort, although I think Piastri could have done better as well, really. But I think maybe Monza will be what he needs to kind of get that fire going again. But yeah, I think a lot of it's riding on the upgrades right now. I'm too confident, too confident. But you never know, do you?
No, yeah, I think with Sainz, sorry, what I meant there, just to clarify, was I think this season is the best we've seen from him.
Yeah, I agree.
In the Ferrari seat. And that's saying a lot because when you actually look at the points he's got in the past, Leclerc's got in the past, it's been quite similar. I think up until last year when Leclerc, I can't remember if he got second or third. My mind's gone.
Leclerc just beat him, but it came down to the last few races, and obviously Sainz got shafted in Vegas and then had a problem in Abu Dhabi qualifying as well. So
yeah, your memory's much better than mine for sure.
The only thing to look at last season was that battle. everything else was dull at the end.
Yeah, but yeah, with Sainz, I think we saw that hunger, as you said at the start of the season, where he's been ditched by Ferrari. And I think he has been dealt quite a bad hand altogether in F1. I said this in the first pod that, he's never really had that sort of priority in a team. So hopefully, he'll deliver some strong performances towards the end of this season while he still can at the front of the grid. And then we'll see what comes from his drive at Williams. But, and obviously, it's weird to be saying this after their run of form recently, but Mercedes weren't quite on it at Zandvoort. Lewis Hamilton missing out on Q3. George Russell not really making as much progress as we thought he would during the race. And I don't think Hamilton's drive was actually too bad in the end. But, is it a sign that maybe at the slower tracks, they're just not going to be... I think they've got maybe the best power unit. But in terms of performance on the car, it still feels like there's a few kinks to be ironed out.
There are two things that they seem to struggle with all season, and that has been high-speed corners. If we remember how quickly it was Norris or Piastri was catching Hamilton through the high speed in Saudi Arabia, he's taking like second out of him a lap, and then he wasn't catching him in the DRS zones. And they've struggled with tire temperatures a lot. I think Russell said after qualifying in the Dutch GP that if the tire temperature is 1 degree too high, they'll lose a tenth in lap time pace, and if it's a degree too low, they can lose up to half a second. So it seems like Mercedes have a couple of things that they need to figure out. One seems to be track specific, and the other is just a bit of a fundamental issue. But yeah, sorry, I kind of tailed off here. I kind of tailed off. I'm not really sure where I was going with that. Sorry about that.
Both of those are kind of, I guess, continuations of problems that they've had over the last 2 seasons, and maybe they've mitigated it a bit more this season. But it was, getting the tyres in the operating window, and I mean, a lot of types of corners they said were difficult for them last season, but I think particularly high speed. So I guess it's maybe seeing that still kind of lingering, where they have been a lot better and they've been in genuine race winning contention and won races, but it's not they're completely fixed yet.
Yeah, I think with Mercedes as well, there's a lot of uncertainty towards next season. I think not having 2 drivers able to develop the car, because I think it's been more about Russell, hasn't it? In terms like they've been trying to just sort of, I mean, they have been using Lewis Hamilton for some experiments early in the season, as we saw. But I think when you don't have that sort of future in mind with one driver, it can distract you from that development path a bit. I think Mercedes have made good strides this season. I do wonder though, they're 4th in the constructors at the moment. There's a big gap to Ferrari to bridge. If they don't get it right at Monza, it could. Sorry, what was that? I heard some background noise. But yeah, so I think it could be a bit of a lonely race for them in 4th in the constructors. If they don't turn things around after a bit of a disappointing weekend at Zandvoort. I don't know.
I'd not seen they're actually 200 points ahead of Aston Martin in 5th, which is just like there's kind of been this rotation of where the midfield battle is, and it's kind of disappeared now. I think it might be lonely for them in terms of the Constructors' Championship, but they do seem to be mixing it up, like weekend by weekend. And Russell was, fighting with Perez, Piastri, Sainz, so and Leclerc at the start of the race as well. So I think it might be more interesting race by race than say last season again.
So let's go to the race predictions then. Obviously, I think you guys both predicted Norris last time, so hats off to you for that one. I thought Verstappen was going to get the historic 4th in a row at Zandvoort, but there you go. How are we feeling towards Monza? Who do we think is the favourite, and why is it McLaren?
It's really hard to look past them, isn't it? I don't. It's like already just based off what we've seen, then I don't see anyone being able to challenge them in a kind of normal race, unless it is, obviously different with Monza with different setups and stuff like that. But I think Norris has to be the favourite in for pole and the Grand Prix win.
You feel the same way, Brandon?
Yeah, it's kind of impossible to look past Norris and McLaren after the Dutch GP. Even when he overtook him on the straight, he had DRS, but the speed he was catching him on the straight anyway when he didn't even have it. There doesn't seem to be a weakness in that McLaren right now. Yeah, it's just impossible to look past them. And that's looking like it's going to run on until the end of the season if they're pulling a 22.9 second gap over Verstappen. It's hard to look past them being the favourites anywhere and everywhere.
No, definitely. And I think certainly with Verstappen, I mean, he's won the last 2 races at Monza, but he's had a bit of history here, you know, with Lewis Hamilton in 2021 when he had that crash. I think where there's no runoff area, and that might be a bit controversial, but he seems to enjoy having that sort of extra security when it comes to the gravel traps and things. It can often go wrong for Verstappen because we know he's an aggressive driver, but that doesn't mean unfair. I think it's clear to make that point. I think he's cleaned his act up a lot, bar a few incidents. So I think it's going to be another really interesting battle between the two because with Monza, you've got that sector 2 where it is a little bit more a case of getting the right exits out of the corner. And I think that's something that Verstappen really nails when it comes to chasing down another driver. And I think maybe sometimes Norris can be guilty of letting the pressure get to him a bit. You know, we've seen how his starts have been quite poor, but maybe that's something mechanical, or is it just mental? But yeah, I think Verstappen's going to have the bit between his teeth this weekend after what happened in Zandvoort. You know, he's going to be looking for revenge, and I still think Verstappen is the one to beat. But if we're talking about McLaren and they've tuned it up, then it's no contest, really, I think, at the moment.
I think where Verstappen is so brilliant is his car can be, he can be a couple of tenths slower and still, win in terms of wheel to wheel and in terms of not making mistakes. He can have that slight deficit in terms of performance, but just the way he drives, the way he defends, which is sometimes controversial, but is mostly effective. But the problem is, if it's more than that, if it's half a second a lap or a second a lap, then there's nothing he can do. Like his individual brilliance can't make up for that machinery deficit.
My bold prediction is Verstappen won't be on the podium. I think there's too much of a demand on the curve here, and Red Bull doesn't like them, and they seem to struggle through the slow speed corners as well. There's a Monza, it's very long straights, but then it's very intense braking, and you need to use curbs in turn 1 and turn 3 and 4, and even Ascari as well. And we saw it in Zandvoort. He made a mistake on his Q3 run because he had to take the curb on the entry, and then it kind of threw his Red Bull to be a bit unsettled. So I actually don't think he'll be on the podium. I think he'll be 4th.
That's a really good point. But then if Verstappen's not on the podium, then who is?
I'm thinking Leclerc because he took a new power unit in Zandvoort anyway, and I think George Russell. Mercedes seemed like they had pretty strong pace in Spa, with so much of that is straight line speed, and they were actually really impressive in the slow speed corners in Zandvoort too. So I think that could really suit them this track.
Oh, that's quite a prediction. I think if you look at him and Hamilton at the moment, I think Hamilton, other than Piastri, has won the most points out of the last 5 races. So obviously Russell qualifies better, but I think his car's set up for that. But in the race, certainly if you've got a really good setup that's high speed, that's suited for the high speed, I think I could see Hamilton maybe qualifying 5th or 6th and just sneaking onto that podium myself. I do think Leclerc will make it as well, but I don't think he's going to win the race. So I'll go for a Norris, Leclerc, Hamilton 1, 2, 3 myself. Have you got a podium, Adam?
No, yeah, I have Norris winning.
Norris win, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Not delusional.
I think I'm not sure about the phone. I think behind Norris it's pretty even. I think between the Mercedes and Piastri, and I don't think either Mercedes driver is kind of supreme over the weekend or over the qualifying and race package. So I'll say Norris and then the two Mercedes drivers, Hamilton second, Russell third. But I think it could be pretty close between them, Piastri and Verstappen. And actually, no, I'll put Verstappen third after Hamilton. And I think, there's, depending on Ferrari's upgrades as well. So I think it is pretty open. But Norris is a favourite. Behind him, that the uncertainty is.
I think with maybe 3 or 4 teams up there, it's going to be one of the best Italian Grand Prix we've had for a long time. I'm really looking forward to it. I think that's a good place to leave it. So thanks very much for joining us today, guys. Really appreciate the input. And to all of you at home, make sure you subscribe to the pod and keep following and enjoy the race at Monza.